The disclaimer economy has trained people to think that clarity is a hostile act, and that is only going to harm women in the future. Welcome back to episode 60 of the Sage Sorority. I'm your host, Shantel. How are we all doing, guys? Happy Thursday. As you can tell by today's title, we have a lot to discuss. There has been quite the discourse over the past week or so with Emma Grede's book being released, and I have a lot of thoughts, some of which I've shared already on TikTok, but we are going to do more of a deep dive today. I'm going to kind of pull it back a little bit, bring everything together, as you can tell by today's title. I think, frankly, TLDR, a lot of people are getting it wrong, and I want to give my 2 cents. So let's get into it. I feel like in the age of hot takes and rage bait, people truly are losing their ability to separate the baby with the bathwater. Take what applies and just leave the rest. For those of you that are new here, the Sage Sorority is a digital sisterhood and platform where the only dues are your ears and never your dignity. Every week here, we unpack modern womanhood, the messy, the beautiful, the sacred, and the beautifully contradictory. You can find us on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And don't forget, subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube if you're finding us there today, and leave us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple. Today's episode is almost a direct follow-up, unintentionally, to the episode I made a few weeks ago regarding Belle and her memoir, Strangers. Different book, almost the same problem. Emma's book came out last week, Start With Yourself, and the internet is tearing her apart for similar reasons why they tore Belle apart, because they are both women who had the nerve to write radical honesty. I'm going to call this from now the disclaimer economy. And if that sounds like it doesn't make sense, I'll explain. If you're new here, make yourself at home, grab a cup of tea, grab some coffee, some wine. I've got my Celsius because it has been a long day. And don't forget to come hang out with us on Instagram or TikTok at the Sage Sorority. And you can find my socials at Shantel Russo. Okay, now let's get into the episode. Start With Yourself by Emma Grede only came out last week. Yeah, it was literally released a week ago. To much fanfare and success, I'm going to see Emma when she comes to London on April 30th, which is next week, for her book tour. Really looking forward to that. I'm a fan of her, obviously living in London. Everyone knows who Emma Grede is. She's done very well for herself. Okay, so I've got my notes with me. So for those who do not know who Emma Grede is or what the hell I'm talking about, Emma Grede is the co-founder and CEO of Good American, famously co-founded with Khloe Kardashian, founding partner of Skims, co-founder of Safely and Off Season, host of the Aspire with Emma Grede podcast, grew up in East London, specifically E13 in Plaistow, and she actually named her holdings company E13 because of the postcode, is married to Jens Grede, who is famously the co-founder of Frame Denim. A lot of Americans know Emma because she was the first Black woman to be on Shark Tank, is born and raised in East London, like I said, mixed race, a British mother, and a Trinidadian Black father. She is the proud mother of 4 children. You heard that right. And through reading the book, you realize that she actually didn't even start having children until she was in her 30s. Okay, back to the issue at hand. There is a lot of discourse on this book, and if you were on TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube, you have seen it this past week. And I'll be honest that most of that discourse is from women who have not read the book. They are just making discourse based on the clips that have been kind of going rampant. Things like Emma being the 3-hour mom, which we're going to talk about, and a larger argument about women needing to not work from home. We're going to get into that as well. This is not a finished book review. This is truly a live kind of mind mapping of my opinion of the book itself, Emma, what she's saying, and the larger conversation at hand. Kind of like what I did with Strangers. Yes, I think you should read the book. I don't think I would come on here and tell you guys I don't like a book and I don't think you should read it, because why would I waste my time with it on the pod? What I'm doing is I'm modeling the behavior that I'm going to ask you guys to do, which is essentially engage with an idea while you're still forming your opinion, rather than waiting until you can perform like a polished, perfect verdict. You get me? Okay, so this is my argument, and I'm calling it the disclaimer economy. And I literally wrote notes, so forgive me. The disclaimer economy is what happens when audiences demand that every writer, thinker, and or public figure pre-account for every single demographic, every single situation, every single life experience, every possible objection before anyone will or can engage with the actual idea, especially if you're a woman. I want to make this clear that this is not an attack on accountability or on the real work of who gets left out of a thesis and an idea. This is specifically an attack on the incessant reflex of contrarianism and to poke holes in someone's story. And I'm telling you guys, like, I don't want to go on a tangent, but this is happening on the internet and it's also happening in real life. Here is a very quick 10-second example. I went to a lunch for International Women's Day and there was a founder there, local to London. She's done very well for herself. I believe she started her business in 2020 and she works in the food service industry. Okay. She's done very well for herself. Most people know her brand and now she's kind of doing more of the founder round. So now more people are starting to know her. There were some amazing women in that room. Let's just say there's about 50 of us. She tells a brief succession of her story. She's on track to hit, 5 million or 6 million either this year or she's already done that this year, right? And International Women's Day is in March. So great start to the year. We're sitting at lunch and we were served some of her food and we're talking about it and how she's done so well for herself. In my table, I was sat at a table of strangers and I say, oh yeah, she said she's on track to do 5 million or whatever the number she said. And she's like, yeah, so she says. And it's like, yeah, of course so she says. She just said it. But why are we poking holes in this woman's story with no facts to do that? Like, why are we not just taking what she said at face value? First of all, yes, you can fudge those numbers, but they're also very easy to debunk, especially when you're a public company. And it's like, why would she sit in this intimate group where she's nervous to speak? She even alluded to that and make up figures and lie about it. Like, it's not even giving that. Why are we poking holes in this woman's story instead of just saying, you know what, congratulations. Maybe she's wrong, maybe she's not, but I don't have evidence otherwise. So why not just take what she's saying at face value instead of trying to poke holes in her story and rip it apart? For what reason? What do you get out of poking holes in this woman's story to which you have no proof of? Very distasteful. And it kind of alludes to this idea that the automatic reflex for people to just be like, yeah, but it's insane and it does not help us. And it's this demand, I'll use that word again, that the writer or the speaker or the figure has to do some sort of work for this arbitrary reader, this unique reader, that the reader themselves doesn't have to do. Side note, this is why studying humanities is so important and will always be so important, because the lack of critical thinking that people have and the lack of being able to just grab context when it's not served up to you on a platter is insane. Everything is not going to be spelled out for you. You have to be able to infer things. I fear this is like advanced reading 101. Anyways, no one is saying you have to shut up and agree, but I am saying as an adult, you have to be able to engage. You have to be able to engage as a thinking adult. Does that make sense? And if you haven't been able to tell from now, I like Emma. I love what she stands for. I love what she's built for herself. I cannot discredit her story. Her story is incredible. She really comes from nothing. And what she's built for herself is nothing short of remarkable. She has defied a lot of odds. And what I love about her story so much is she also has a gaggle of children. In this year, 2026, she's got 4 children. People don't have kids like that anymore. She has incredible success and she has a large family. And she's not a celebrity. All of those kids, I'm pretty sure, none of them were by surrogacy. They were all, she birthed all of them, which is crazy. I love her loads. And I think the insistence on all these disclaimers is not fruitful or helpful for women. You have to take what applies and leave the rest. If you just shut out your ears to whatever you don't like and whatever makes you feel uncomfortable, you are missing the plot and you are missing your own opportunity to learn. And the gag is this is a woman thing. And I know this to be true because she even talks about it in the book herself. She's at lunch with her husband. This guy comes over to say hi. He starts bragging about some big deal he did in this, that, and the third. And her brain immediately goes to, I don't care about this. You're ruining my lunch with my husband. You're arrogant and you're annoying. So I don't even care about what you're saying. But her husband was tapped the fuck in. Her husband was listening to what this guy was saying. And as soon as the guy leaves, he was like, great. now I know what to do with the commercial building she's like, what are you talking about? Like, she was so wrapped up in how she felt. And listen, I'm not saying emotions don't matter. I'm not saying she shouldn't have been annoyed. I'm not saying any of that. Again, context, inference, and using our critical thinking skills. But look at the difference of that. Her husband could have been equally annoyed, but he wasn't. Okay, this guy's annoying, but he's gonna leave. I'm not gonna take it personally. And him being able to engage for however long that guy was there landed him to a great idea that he wouldn't have had. And this is Emma telling us this story, and she is a boss babe business girl. She has the scent of a bloodhound when it comes for opportunity and getting shit done. And she's still telling us this. So this is a big thing. But if we catch it and we talk about things, then we can do better in the future. Her saying that story will stay with me because I'm someone who I never want to let my emotions get in the way of my well-being or get in the way of my knowledge or get in the way of my bag. You know what I mean? So in regards to Emma and my theory on the disclaimer economy, I think it's playing out in 3 major ways. 1, the way we talk about motherhood, of course. 2, how we talk about women in the workplace. 3, how we make big decisions in our lives. And money flows under all of these things. Okay. So point number 1 is the 3-hour mom pylon. For those of you that don't know, TLDR, Emma Grede has been making the rounds, doing a lot of promo for the book, and she has mentioned a few times, and she mentions it in the book, I believe, that she considers herself a 3-hour mom. And basically what that means is after 3 hours with her kids, she's tired. She also mentions in the book pretty often that she doesn't really read her school email, her child's school emails, she doesn't pack all their lunches every day. She doesn't really do that. She's I pay people to do a job and they do it and I let them get on with it. And people hear that and have a lot of harsh vitriol about it, especially the moms, I'm not a mother. I do think that motherhoodism has a lot of fixing up to do. I'll put that in a nice way. I think there's a lot of misery loves company. I think there's a lot of, if I have to suffer, then so do you. And I don't think a lot of mothers, not all, don't like when the advice is not suffer through it. I don't think they like that. And I think it's having to reckon with their own lives and their own situations. I think a lot of people do that in a lot of different circumstances, but I think it's very loud and brash when it comes to motherhood. I've seen comments saying, why would you have kids if you're just going to put them in daycare? I want to spend all my time with my kids, And it's just then do that. No one's saying you shouldn't do that. She's just saying she doesn't want to do that. And I don't know why this is so radical. And Sahar Karam, she's on TikTok. She mentioned it. She's you know who's a 3-hour mom? Poor moms, immigrant moms, moms that own their own small business. And it's just yeah, why are we acting like this 3-mom thing is so radical and terrible? But the internet has decided that it makes her a bad mother, a bad feminist, and just a very bad example, right? And like I said about the disillusionment of motherhood, it's not new. It's not anything new. This has been going on for generations. What's new is a woman of her profile, of her race, of her beauty, of her wealth, and of her family size, being honest about where she sits on the gradient and how she feels about it. And to be honest, the thing is that what Emma is saying is that even if she wasn't rich and even if she wasn't famous, she would still be a 3-hour mom. I genuinely believe she would still be a 3-hour mom, and no one would bat an eye at this. I truly believe that there is no good mom, bad mom binary. I really don't. I think most women sit somewhere in the middle. But in mom world and mom internet, there's only good mom, bad mom. There is no in the middle. You're not allowed to be in the middle. And I think this is just another way of how we harm women, ultimately ourselves. If we're always trying to put someone in a box, then they're never allowed to leave that box and they're never allowed to do anything different. And the fact is, people are dynamic. It's just not that simple. And obviously for me, the gray is always where we live on the podcast. That's always what we talk about because that is real life. Most people sit in the gray. Most mothers sit in the gray. Sometimes you're a good mom for a season or a week or a day or a month. And sometimes you're a bad mom for an afternoon or a period of time in life. But most of the time, most people are in that gray area. They might be good at some things and awful at others. And there's so many different archetypes and layers for this. And I'm not a mom, and I feel like I know these things to a palpable level. So I can only imagine what it's like for mothers. The mothers who shame you, like I said, for putting your kids in daycare. The mothers who shame you for putting your kids in public school. The mothers who shame you for not wanting to spend every moment with your children. Misery loves company, and women who are often the loudest about this kind of stuff are usually the most uncomfortable on their own and with their own decisions. And I said this in one of my recent TikToks, but I'll say it again. Emma also says that she's at home by 5:30 every day. You know, she kind of goes back and forth with sometimes doing bedtime, sometimes not, but for the most part, she's out of the house in the morning quite early, and she's home by 5:30 every day. Sometimes she's doing bath time, sometimes she's doing dinner, she's catching up with her kids, how was their day, da-da-da-da. And there was another internet discourse about she doesn't want the soft life, and I was like, what do you guys think the soft life is? Like, there's not a lot of you that can guarantee you're in your house by 5:30 every day. There's just not, especially if you work outside of the home. Like, you can't. Even if you are able to leave, you're still commuting. Like, you don't have the demands that you can be there no matter what. And that is her choice. Like, she's not whipping home to be there by 5:30 because she has to let the nanny go, or she has to, if someone is wealthy. Like, it's by choice. And tying it back to the soft life conversation, we have to ask ourselves, like, what does soft life mean to you? 9 times out of 10, when women say they want the soft life, they're talking about money. Emma has it. So if she's home by 5:30, it's because she wants to be, because she has the money to be home. And to be honest, if she really wanted to, she could send her kids to boarding school. Wealthy people do that all the time. She could send her kids to boarding school and see them for spring break and see them for summer and see them for Christmas. I need everyone to just, like, again, use your sense. And this is the thing that a lot of women are not allowed to say openly, and we're not allowed to want or desire or even crave openly. Like, even the term soft life, like, we're talking about money. You want money. You want to have a lot of it, and you want it to not be a source of contention in your life. We need to be comfortable talking about that. I have long believed that women don't talk about money enough, and it holds us back. And I learned this lesson the loudest when I worked in sales. Because when you work in sales, and if you worked in sales, you know, talking about money and talking about sales is standard. Like, you're always talking about sales, and you're always talking about clients, and you're always talking about closing deals, and you're always talking about bonuses, because that is the driver for everything that you do. So it becomes a very normal part of conversation. And then when I left sales to go into other roles, because I had enough of it, I just realized how we can really hold ourselves back as women. Anyways, that's another pod for another day. The soft life includes money, and only you can really determine how much of it includes, but let's not play ourselves here. And I think the disillusionment with motherhood before you even have your first child is real. And I've seen it even in people I know. And we're talking about women in their 30s who are realizing that motherhood looks a lot different to me than I thought it would be. Now, I believe it is such an insane and profound experience that it's not something you can ever really truly know until you experience it. I believe that wholeheartedly. However, what I will say is the amount of women who plan for motherhood, plan for the experience, is significantly smaller than those that just kind of end up in it. And this is a real thing. Think about the people you know who've had children. How many of them went to birthing classes? How many of their partners went to Lamaze classes? You know, how much therapy did they do to unpack their own wounds and their own trauma? How much saving did they do? You know, I watched a TikTok not too long ago from a midwife who's very popular in the UK. And she said, you know, a lot of women of color, like, they don't save when they're having children. Like, they don't plan as much as their white contemporaries. That's a huge issue. And it ties into this disillusionment. And then you're here and you're like, you feel like you've been sold a dream. And in some ways you absolutely have. And in some ways you've sold yourself a dream. Side note, but for those of you that don't know, I always have like 4 different books on the go. And one of them, it's called Promises I Can Keep. And the subtitle is Why Poor Women Put Motherhood Before Marriage. First of all, someone mentioned this on TikTok. I heard the title and I could not click my fingers to get to Amazon quick enough, because what an insane title. I was like, I need this book. And it's heavily skewed to American data. I think it's a really important study on women, motherhood, marriage amongst low-income urban women, because we don't often get these details in a conscientious way and in an actual way. Instead of having theories, like, we need to actually speak to these women and figure out what's going on and why. But anyways, it's a dense book and I'm working through it. And I'm thinking as I read, and I'm using that point because that's what I want us to do, to be able to engage while we're getting the content, while we're receiving the information, and not just react to it. You know what I mean? To tie this all in and go back to Emma Grede, the pylon, I really believe, is a symptom. Women arguing and pushing back to another woman on her experience of motherhood is the problem, and perpetuates the problem, and perpetuates even more issues in the future. We have to be able to let women speak their truth. If she is a 3-hour mom and that is the only bandwidth she enjoys, we have to let her be honest about that. Us perpetuating this, no, how could you say that? How could you do that? It doesn't help anyone, because there's a lot of women that think like Emma, but they don't have the courage to say that because of the blowback. And if you don't have the courage, respect, and confidence, adding in that keyword, to let another woman sit comfortably in her own honesty, you don't have the same to let yourself sit comfortably in your own honesty. That is a fact. Which is how we end up with women in their 30s blindsided by motherhood, because no one told them. No one was honest about their experience. It needs to change. Motherhood is so demanding and relentless in the best and worst of ways that at the very least, we deserve women to have accurate accounts of what it feels like and what it looks like from the women boots on the ground. We need to be able to take what applies and let the rest fly. I feel like it is a huge point that has been missed in a lot of the discourse. That brings me to point number 2, the work from home discourse. Guys, Emma's argument is that if you want to advance your career, we're talking corporate, working from home is a killer. And it's a killer for women. So that's what she says, right? And the 3-hour mom thing has people buzzing, but the work from home thing has people fuming, literally fuming. This is the context. Emma's in her 40s, so generationally, there's a difference here. She is from East London. She came from nothing. She is what Brits would call a grafter. And she even says that in her book. A grafter is, for all my non-British people, someone who is extremely hardworking, very hardworking. They get to it. Every day, rain or shine, they get to the money. She is a grafter from a community of East London grafters, okay? She didn't go to university. She dropped out of college. Her mom, when she was 16, her mom left to go to Spain on a romantic expedition, which Emma says in the book she knew was a mistake. And she was a parentified eldest daughter. I need the context there. And I get it. Not everyone read the book. They saw the clips. They're giving feedback on the clips. First thing I want to say off the top is that most people listening to Emma or watching Emma in these clips are not trying to have success at the same level. Also, context that I want to give is that, like everything, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Emma runs her own stuff now. However, Emma didn't get her career in corporate. She worked at an agency for about 6 years, asked for a raise, didn't get it, went out on her own, and has been doing her own thing ever since. So this is not a woman that also rose the corporate ladder. Now she's at the top of her own corporate ladder, and logical and fair feedback, I think, is, you could be part of the solution, but instead you are doubling down on the problem. And to some extent, I do agree with that. Listen, again, she also says in the book, if you want to work 3 days a week and be home by 5 o'clock and walk your dog whenever they need a walk and go to Pilates and do all these things, she was like, that is fine. But then don't come to me and ask for a raise, right? And some people say that, but she's right. She's right. Whether or not you guys want to admit it or you like what she's saying, she's not incorrect. And anyone who has a job where they are earning money from someone else knows this. And this is me speaking to you from someone who had a work from home job in 2015. In 2015, the only people who worked from home were people who worked in IT. And it still wasn't everyone. I worked in lots of companies and everyone who was in IT was on site all the time. Just depends on your setup, but it wasn't a rarity. So I say that from my vantage point, and then also with her vantage point being the boss in corporate. She's never really been the worker. And when she was the worker and didn't get what she wanted, what she felt was fair, and it was fair because she had been there 6 years. They didn't want to give her a raise, of course. So she left. But with my vantage point, I knew that back then. And we were allowed to work from home. I wasn't pushing the envelope by working from home. We were allowed to. That was part of the job. But we used to meet up as a team every Wednesday, and some people used to come in more than that. I didn't want to. I was like, we only have to go in on Wednesdays. That's the only day I'm going in. But when people are meeting up constantly and you are not part of that fabric, you will miss out. And if you don't like that, or if you don't want to hear that, let me be the first to tell you that you're being delusional and very naive. That is the truth. If you don't like it, I'm so sorry. You can't rise up the ranks in someone else's shit. You got to start your own shit. Because that is it. That is it. That is it. If you want to work from home and you still want to go the corporate ladder and you're not willing to sacrifice, then you know that this comes first. Everything else comes after, and you're going to bust your ass in every way possible other than going into the office. Make that decision for yourself. She talks in the book about having your non-negotiables and that life is a series of trade-offs. And I 1000% agree. So you guys know I love you, Dan, and we have a mutual relationship. But people come to me often, friends, family, whatever, and like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And for me, I've been in this country 7 years. And everyone who knows me personally knows that my indefinite leave is my non-negotiable. That is the top of my pyramid. That is the star and baby Jesus on my Christmas tree. That is through which all decisions funnel through. If it's a great opportunity, but it interferes with my indefinite leave, it's not a great opportunity, and it's not a great opportunity for me at this present time and space. Oh, but what do you mean? No. Doesn't that hurt your feelings? Don't you feel like you're missing out? Maybe, sometimes, but again, my non-negotiable is through which all decisions flow through. What are your non-negotiables? If your non-negotiable is you want to be home at 5:30 every day, nothing else matters as long as you're home at 5:30 every day, then maybe you're going to make less money. Maybe you are going to have a job that you don't love as much. Maybe you are going to have a job where commuting is not an option for you. So you have to work from home. Again, maybe less money, maybe less growth. Maybe you can't get the fancy job in London. You have to get something closer to home. Does that burn? Does that sting? Maybe, but it shouldn't, because you know that this is your non-negotiable and you know that you're not willing to flex on this. So everything else is up for grabs. I personally feel like when women know their non-negotiables, they are significantly happier in life. You have to know what it is that you want. You have to know what it is that you want. If you know that you're 32 years old and you want 4 children by the time you turn 40, and all decisions flow through that, then let all decisions flow through that. Let your partnerships and who you're dating and entertaining flow through that. Let your job and how you're setting yourself up for success flow through that. Let the country you live in, or the province you live in, or the state you live in, and whatever mat leave you get, let it flow through that. Let your health and your fitness and how you're getting your core intact and your pelvic floor, let decisions flow through that. You will be so much happier. And I feel like this is the honest nuance and context that the internet just will not let her have, because I'm not saying that she's above criticism. No one is, frankly. But I am saying you have to understand where she's coming from and where she's speaking from before you decide to get in a huffy and, take what she said personally. She might not be speaking to you. That's why when it's like, oh, this and that and the work from home and then this and that, but most of you are not trying to build to that level of success. Most of you are not trying to be senior VPs and MDs and C-suites. Most of you are not, and that's not a slight. That's just the fact. It's a numbers game. It's lonely at the top and it's a pyramid for a reason. So why are you taking it personally? I see lots of things online where it's like, oh, no man is going to do this or no man's going to do that. That's not my reality. That's not my life. That's not what I want for myself. That's not the direction I'm going. So I take that advice with a grain of salt, because I know that that person is speaking from their own experience and what they think is a baseline blanket term of advice. If I was like, no, I'm going to find a work from home job and still rise the ranks, then that's what I'm going to do. And I would not let what she's saying persuade me in one direction or dissuade me from what I want. I hope I'm making sense. And that is the work of truly engaging with an idea, being able to receive things, take what applies and leave the rest, and not get your emotions in the way of receiving quality information, in my opinion. And like I said, if you believe that you can hit that level of success while working from home, then do it. Do it and prove everyone wrong, like how Emma proved everyone wrong in her neighborhood when she was like, what we should have ended up as is a footballer's side piece or a rapper's baby mama. prove everyone wrong. Go forth and do. But don't insist that what she's saying is factually incorrect, because that is not true. And also, yes, is the critique honest when it says, Emma could perpetuate a new track for women and support women working from home and still deliver their best work? Absolutely. And do I think in many ways she probably does? Absolutely. But if that's how she wants to run her ship, that's how she wants to run her ship, right? Does working from home benefit women more than it does men? Absolutely. Mothers? Absolutely. And especially just even women like periods and cycles and hormones, of course, working from home gives us more leeway and flexibility to do our best work. I do agree with that 100%. I have been an avid work from homer and in support of work from home work for as long as I knew it was a thing. But in my experience, has there been significant trade-offs? Absolutely. But I was willing to make those trade-offs because for me, working from home at one point was my North Star. Nothing else mattered. The amount of money didn't matter as much, the location, the role, the industry, as long as I could work from home. And that's why knowing what you want is of the utmost importance. And it is worth you checking in with yourself once a year, twice a year, and making sure that you know what it is you actually want and ensuring that your small decisions and your big decisions are going in that direction. The gap between what you want and what it requires, that is where the disclaimer economy truly thrives, because it truly lets women claim ambition and girl bossing it up and all these things, soft lifing it up, while refusing to come to terms with what that actually requires. And I see this constantly. This is not just about work. I also see this in relation to dating. I see this in relation to friendship, and it needs to stop. Real critique and an honest description of where we're at and where we want to be is also important. And like I said about working from home and that the culture does benefit women, at the same time, working from home can hold you back from great leaps and bounds in your career. We have to be able to hold multiple truths at once and figure out what we want to work for us. In the book, she has a whole chapter on trade-offs. I'm so glad that she made it because I truly believe in everything in life. Whatever you gain, you lose. Even if you gain the love of your life and you're building a life with somebody, you are trading that off for what you had while being single, which is complete autonomy, doing your own thing all the time, never having to consider someone else. Of course, you can say those trade-offs are worth it, and that's fine. And I'm not saying that the trade-offs mean a negative thing. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is they're a real thing, right? You gain children, you gain more love than you could have ever seen in your life or experience, but you're removing a lot of things from your life as well. And I feel like as women, because we have so many trade-offs, we need to be honest about them to ourselves and to each other, because that is the only way to truly build the life of your dreams and the life that you want, is being radically honest about these trade-offs and weighing them up constantly. But one thing I want to end this section with is a quote that she says in the book. When I heard her say it, I was like, oh no, I need to write this down. And she says, if you're going to be successful in business, you can't pretend money doesn't exist. You can't see it as something that needs to be escaped or ignored, or as something with little value once you have a lot of it. Let that sit, guys. And then point number 3 is we need to talk about the defaulting to men for major decisions. And I talked about this in episode 59, Strangers by Belle Burden. And unfortunately or fortunately, it is now coming up again. And this is less, I would say, in the cultural discourse, but it's very obvious in the book and very clear in the book. And I think it's worth mentioning. So firstly, Emma talks about her friends or people that she knows that say that her talking about money or her love of money or whatever, her discourse around money is unelegant, unladylike, and I'm paraphrasing. And this is an example of women policing each other on a regular basis. And she says she knows women that own their own money and women that, as she puts it, wouldn't have a sausage without their husband, which I think is the randomest saying. I don't know if that's a British saying. If that is a British saying, please comment down below, because I've never heard anyone say that, and I thought it was so funny. But it's about policing women's ambitions, their desire, and their honesty. Women who also probably want the same things. They just don't have the courage to say it, right? No one doesn't want money. It's just the way you go about it and how comfortable you feel speaking about it. And she talks about this ad nauseum in the book, because she talks about being on being in conferences and being on panels where women are not being honest about their money experiences, business and profit and equity sharing and all these things that men talk about all the time and are allowed to talk about. And she's even said in doing her podcast, she's had a really hard time getting women to speak about money clearly and honestly in a way that men do without thought and without fail. That's again part of this disclaimer economy, is the excessive policing that women go through. And it's the mechanism by which women get trained to default themselves away from their own clarity and what they know to be true from themselves. There's an early point in her book where she talks about how quickly women default their own thinking to like an Instagram post, something a colleague said, something a manager said, something a boss said. She also says in the book that women are far too concerned in the workplace with like what everyone else is doing and not about what's going on for themselves. Like they're too outwardly focused and not enough inwardly focused. And I think that's huge. You guys know on the pod, I say often, look to yourself for answers, look inward for answers before you go to the world. And I think that just emphasizes my point even more. But one thing she doesn't say in that is defaulting to a husband or to a male spouse. And I made a TikTok on this, but it's worth reiterating on the podcast. She doesn't mention that, but it is the same pattern. And I talked about this in episode 59, Strangers by Belle. Intelligent, capable women are defaulting, turning off their brain and defaulting major decisions to a man. And listen, I want to turn off my brain like any of the other girls. Date night, vacations, I got you. I'm there. I get it. Yes, I know that women are overran with stuff. We are burdened. We have a lot going on. We have a lot of thoughts going through our head at any given time. We have a truckload of emotional labor. I get it. I would never say those things are not true because they are for the vast majority. However, and of course there is a however, when it comes to real decisions, your money, your safety, your kids' safety, your kids' money, your health, you cannot just default those decisions to a man because you just don't want to think about it. If you are alive and your brain is fully functioning, you need to think about it. I love it so much in the book because she says she shares everything with her husband 50-50 and she still gets her own lawyers to look over things. That is a boss bitch. That is a girl who is not just talking the talk for the internet and for a book. That is a girl who is living this life offline. And I love that because I also know that when you have the courage to speak your own truth, you encourage others to do the same. And I love that she said that because that is something that I believe women should do. I have talked to many of my friends about getting married and settling down, and some with men that have a significant amount of means. And one thing I've always said is 1, prenup, and 2, forensic accountant. You have to know what is going on with your money, his money, which will become your money. And it's not enough to just default to a guy. What makes you think that that man knows so much more than you do? And what makes you think that he is going to think of what's best for himself and what's best for you? Love is not enough, and we say this often, so why are you acting like it is? Why isn't he defaulting these decisions to you? Think about that. And here is the major contrast between Strangers and Start With Yourself that makes the case. So Strangers, obviously Belle was married for 20 years, and shortly before they got married, and the prenup stated that whatever they earn during the marriage, they would solely own, right? So although she came into the marriage with 2 trust funds and her husband came in with arguably nothing, and both of those trust funds, the first trust fund bought their Tribeca home, the second trust fund bought their home on Martha's Vineyard. Whatever was earned during the marriage, they would keep. Obviously, you know where this is going, and if you listen to the episode, I won't rehash it. Belle stopped working when she started having children, and he continued to work and rise the ranks in his career. And right before they're about to go to court, he said, you know what, you can have the homes. I won't fight you on them, because they were communal property. Because although she bought them with her trust fund, she put his name on the deed for both properties. And when she was signing the prenup, her husband had subsequently said to change at the very last minute her lawyer told her it was a mistake. Like, this is not what people do. This is not what your brother did. This is not something you should do. And she went against it. And she knew she was going against legal advice. Then you have obviously Emma Grede, who's married to Jens, co-founder of Frame. By her own account, still getting her own lawyers and on 50-50 with everything. She knows where she stands. And these are two women that approach partnership completely different. One as an autonomous thinking woman and another one who is defaulting to a fairy tale. And I just want you to know which side of the fence you fall on, or because there's gradients to everything, where your actions have been leading you to. Having your own lawyer, and I'm going to bring this up because I know that this will be a point of contention for people. Having your own lawyer, just like having a prenup, does not mean that you don't trust your partner. It doesn't mean that you don't love your partner, and it doesn't mean that you don't believe in the union. Having your own money does not mean that you're obsessed with it either. Reading your own contracts does not mean you're cold. The disclaimer economy has trained people and is literally training people to think that clarity is a hostile act, and that is only going to harm women in the future. Clarity is not hostility. It is actually a bare bones functionality of adulthood. So let's bring it all together. We've got motherhood. Women are being punished for being honest about where they sit on the gradient of motherhood. Work, women are being punished for being honest about what advancement really requires, what ambition and what soft life actually requires. Like, you want to get those things, you want to reach those levels, what kind of dues do you have to pay? And what kind of trade-offs do you have to make? Because like I said, there's trade-offs in everything. And 3, decisions surrounding men and decisions that involve men. Women are punished for having clarity instead of deferring to men. All 3. Women are trained to perform the version of themselves that other women will approve of. And instead of doing the harder work, the more complicated work, the more excavating work of being honest with themselves about what they want and where they want to go and what they're willing to sacrifice to get it, we have hot takes and rage bait. Like I said, and I've echoed throughout this entire episode, take what applies and leave the rest. And I think that that's really important for life, but it's also important for what you're consuming online. I can't stress that enough. So I feel like this episode, like I said, it was a true mind map. So we've got different things kind of all over the place, but I'm going to bring it all home because I really want my point to land and I want it to make sense for you. Okay, so let's bring this all home. What I really wanted this episode to detail and explain and to reveal is that on the front end, it looks like we're just talking about Emma Grede, the internet discourse, and her book, Start With Yourself. But we ended up talking about motherhood, careers, and money, right? And the biggest decisions that women have to make in their lives. And it's not because I can't stay on topic, but it's because it's all part of the exact same conversation. The disclaimer economy isn't just about one author, one book, and one thought. It's truly a pattern, and once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Think about what we've actually discussed. We talked about how Emma Grede got dragged for saying that she's a 3-hour mom, for being honest about the gradient of motherhood that every mother has sat on quietly for generations. We talked about how she got dragged for saying work from home is a killer if you want a certain level of success in the corporate world that she's talking about. A statement that is factually true from her vantage point, whether you like it or not. And we talked about how her own friends have called her obsession or love for money unelegant. Not strangers on the internet. These are women she knows IRL. Calling the thing that has built the comfort of her life, because women have been trained to be embarrassed about wanting what men are celebrated for wanting. And underneath every single one of those examples is the same mechanism, the same beast. Women being punished for being honest. Women policing other women for clarity, for ambition, for being able to frame what they actually want in life. And the cost of that policing is very real. And I mean the real cost is that we're training women to stop thinking for themselves, to go against their gut beliefs, to outsource it, to listen to an Instagram post, to listen to a TikTok video, to listen to a friend, instead of looking inward for answers and then going outward for secondary opinion if you need it. To wait until someone else does the thinking and then either disagree or agree. For someone else to build the soft life. But never actually sit down and say, what do I think and what do I want? Which brings me to Belle burden. Because if you want to see what happens when a woman truly outsources her thinking and outsources major decisions in her life, just read Strangers. 20 years of marriage, no strong opinion on her own life should her partnership dissolve, and everything was filtered through her husband first. And then on the other end, you have Emma Grede. Her own knowledge that if something happens to her husband today, the plan she will put in place for tomorrow. Not because she doesn't love him, not because she doesn't trust him, but because she trusts herself. This is what the internet is missing, because she trusts herself enough independently. She believes in herself. She believes in Emma. And I want you guys to believe in you. Believe in you more than you believe in your partner, even inside a partnership that she's fully committed to. And that is what thinking for yourself looks like when the stakes are real, when you are a true embodied woman in adulthood. And ultimately, here's what I want you to take from this episode. Stop waiting for the perfect thinker to write the perfect book that accounts for every possible version of you. That book is not coming. No one is going to write a book that anticipates every race, every demographic, every ability, every socioeconomic exception, every country, every situation, every block, every hood, every life stage, every curveball that your life has thrown at you. That is not the author's job. That is your job. That is your job to read, to listen, to watch, to think, and then to metabolize the ideas. Take what applies and leave the rest. That is how grown, mature adult women engage with ideas. And ultimately, that is how you expand. And that is how you get better incrementally each day. And if you're sitting down and you're listening to this episode and you're listening to me talk, and you are maybe considering that you can't remember the last time you had an opinion on your own that was fully your own, not influenced by TikTok or Instagram or this person or that person, on your relationship, on your career, whether you are building the life that you want for yourself, it's not that you're broken or you're misguided. It's just that your life is currently noisy. And I wonder, do you trust other people's opinion more than you trust your own? And if so, why? And start there, because that is something you can fix. And I want you to start with one decision, just one, and asking yourself a question that no one else ultimately can answer for you. And that is, what do you think? This is something I can help you with in one-on-one coaching. I've mentioned it before on the pod, but I do offer one-on-one coaching. All the link is in the show notes. Let's help you get more clarity regardless of what is going on in your life. Because ultimately, no one is coming to save you. And that is a hard pill to swallow, especially if you grew up with the books and the Disney and the this and the that. No one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. And no one is coming to write the book with all the answers. Me, as someone who loves a book because I love answers. And no one is coming to tell you what to think, and no one is coming to tell you what to do. I'm not. The only person that can do that sort of thinking for your life is you. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner your life will look and feel like yours. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be sunshine, lollipops, and roses every day, but there is a sense of contentment that you will have because you know that your life is your own, because the decisions that you make, the ones that you're in control of, you exercise willingly. Anyways, that was a bit of a yap. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Ultimately, I think that the book is great. I'm really enjoying it. As someone who's read a lot of business books, both by men and women, I am enjoying her story. It's nice to hear from someone that has a very different background, especially as a Brit. I never get tired of hearing people's stories, especially people that have overcome a lot. It makes me feel like I have come far and I've got far more to go. And I think that if you are looking for the same type of reverence in your life, you would enjoy the book. You might not agree with everything, but I think you take what applies and what can make your life better and how you can grow, and you leave the rest. Anyways, guys, that's this week's episode. If you liked it, you know what to do. Share it with a friend who's also reading the book, or any of you that are going to her book tour on April 30th at Hackney Empire in London. If you are going to be there, I'm going to be there. So if you see me, please say hi. I would love to meet any and all of you that are going to be there. I'm looking forward to it. That is it for me this week. Don't forget to leave us a review and comment down below if you are a Spotify girly. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye!